Hello and welcome to the Swing Smarter monthly, well, not monthly newsletter anymore. Last time Joe and I got on, it was the Swing Smarter monthly newsletter. Now it is the Swing Smarter hitting training podcast. So first I want to welcome you to the show, Joe.
Thank you, Joey. Thanks for having me back.
we got to collect our Joes and Joeys, as many as we can on one call.
Yeah, there's not too many.
Well, hey, this is a take two or part two, not take two, because we didn't do it over. This is a part two to our sports psychology of hitting series, and Joe's got 10, and we'll go over those just briefly, but 10 different principles, sports psychology principles that he's got in the system that he works with. And we're going to be going over the second one today, which is the unconscious brain versus the conscious brain. So Joe, just give people who didn't listen to the first episode just a little bit about your background that makes you credible to talk on sports psychology.
Well, I taught in Northern New Jersey for 41 years, and I coached baseball different levels for 38. I was varsity coach for 21, and I retired in 2014. And I still did some coaching at a Catholic school down in New Jersey, and I did that for 4 years, and then COVID came around and interrupted 2020 season, and then 2021 season. It's all the players were graduated and they missed their senior season, and I decided not to go back. But I've been doing this since I retired, writing these articles just for the heck of it. I taught a sports psychology class that I created at my school, and that was the only class I took with me. I put everything in a couple big notebooks, and I said, So I wrote this way back in the early 90s for my players. It was only just a few pages, just basic things. And I said, one day I'm going to expand on this and take the stuff that I was using in my sports psychology class, like different units. And probably my favorite one was, the conscious, unconscious aspect of, how the brain works. Mm-hmm. And I saved a lot of things, like a lot of the articles are from, like, there was one about Mike Schmidt from 1983 and George Brett from 1980. And there was an article from New York Times Magazine in 1989 called Finding the Zone. And I saved that from 1989, the hard copy. I probably still have it somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I said, this stuff is really, I was interested in. I mean, I was interested in this stuff since I was in college.
Right.
And I did a term paper relating this book. I think I mentioned that last time, Psycho-Cybernetics, mm-hmm. Maxwell Maltz. And I related it to the game of handball. How basically when you try to hit a kill shot, you can't. And when you don't try to hit a kill shot, you do. Mm-hmm. And, what was I, 19, 20, 21 years old? That kind of drove me crazy. And if you're strong-willed, it's probably a disadvantage. I think George Brett probably had that problem in 1980, trying to hit 400. Mm-hmm. And so I was always interested in it. I just never found an outlet for it, more or less. And
well, I think what's interesting is your journey is like my journey when it into the hitting side of things, right? You're not a sports performance psychologist, just like I'm not a biomechanist or a physicist or an electrical engineer, right? Where I can talk about hitting. But I think the thing both you and I have in common is we have a passionate curiosity for an aspect of hitting. Now you do the mechanical side, but it seems like the sports psychology side has really been the bug in your brain that has never really deafened down. And no. So Joe has been on an obsessive grabbing information about sports performance psychology and reading into it. And you can have a master's in it without having a master's in it. So that's what I like about Joe. He's always thinking about this stuff, and it's thinking about this stuff almost obsessively. Like you said, I mean, he's got hard copies of some of these articles that date back into the 80s and in the 90s and things like that. I mean, that's somebody who's really into something and is going into different nooks and crannies of it and that. But before we dig into the deeper part of the unconscious brain versus the conscious brain, go over your 10 pillars that you talk about. And again, you don't have to go deep into any of them. We're going to go deep into the second one.
Well, there's 10. Last time I forgot number 9. So you inspired me to put number 9 into number 8.
Okay.
Do the first part of number 10 and make that number 9. So here goes. The other thing is this, the conscious, unconscious, that's not the second one. Remember the...
Oh, that's right. 4 and 5, right?
I did a series of articles for a website called minddesignsports.org. Started by a then sophomore at Ridgewood High School in New Jersey. And it's kind of amazing what he did. He brought in people from like over 30 countries around the world on this project. And I was just texting him the other day because he texted me, when's the Spanish meeting? I guess he got me mixed up with somebody else. And like, I try to write my best Spanish. I haven't taken Spanish in a long time, but comprende, like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Well, anyway, the 10 rules. First one is know yourself. And I took personality theories from the personality chapter in my psychology book and just incorporated them into hitting, like a hitting mindset. And I found that interesting. The second one is know the picture. And I have like 15 different things under that as to what the picture does. Kind of like, what people talk about now, about what your approach is and that sort of stuff. And the third one is know the situation. I did a takeoff on the poem Casey at the Bat, and I incorporated concepts from the social cognitive theory, Albert Bandura, and I had applied it to Casey at the Bat, and namely reciprocal determinism, how your thoughts affect your behavior, and your behavior affects your thoughts, and your thoughts affect they're mutually they affect each other, all three of them. And I put that into Casey at the Bat. The fourth one was, the so-called paralysis through analysis. And the fifth one was basically, you can't make yourself hit. You can't force yourself to hit. You can't try to hit. George Brett talked about that a lot in 1980. Alex Rodriguez talked about it when he was going for his 500th home run. The sixth one is the conscious brain versus the unconscious brain. And we'll go into that today. That's one of the articles that's on the website. And number 7 is don't beat yourself. And then I go into the emotional and even do a thing on fear. And I'm finishing that up, and then I'm done with this project. I'm doing a thing on fear. I even incorporated probably my favorite short story of all time is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And how Ichabod Crane in the story was, he was afraid, it was his own imagination that caused him to be afraid. There was no Headless Horseman. Number 8 was deal with the ups and downs, which I threw in number 9 and made it part of number 8. And the number 9 was you have to, even when you hit the ball well, you might fail. So I incorporated that in number 8. And number 9 is now live in the moment. I took that from number 10 because number 10 was quite long. And number 10, I changed to find the zone, but the subtitle was let the zone find you, which is more the case. I mean, you can't find the zone. I mean, you can't hit a home run when you try. Alex Rodriguez said that. Right. I found that out the hard way. You can't do a kill shot in handball by trying. So, I mean, let the zone find you. And I go into, there's a great book. I don't think I mentioned it the last time. It was from the 1950s, believe it or not.
Mm.
And the remarkable thing about this whole thing is now it's like common. Everybody's like into this stuff. But this stuff goes back. It goes back to like 1950s. This book called Zen and the Art of Archery. It's about either a student or a teacher in Japan who wanted to learn to be an expert archer. So he, got in with this expert archery teacher, and they go into the whole thing, and it's so applicable to hitting that it's like, it's incredible. And I go back and read the highlighted things very short book. I think you could get it on Amazon. It's really, really a great book. And so I included a part about archery. Then I kind of got fascinated with rock climbers. And there was a series on PBS by a Stanford neuroscientist by the name of David Eagleman. And he went in about rock climbers, and then, Alex Honnold came along and he scaled El Capitan without any ropes or
free solo for those documentary on Netflix.
Yes. Free solo. That's like just looking at him, and even the photographers, the people, they got Academy Awards for it. Mm-hmm. The shots, they like make your stomach turn, like do this. And there was a study, they did a study on him where they did a brain scan of him on his amygdala. And they did all these tests, like trying to elicit fear and, the participants of the study and all this stuff. And his amygdala, which is, basically in simple terms, it's where your fears are processed or where they lie, or
the reptilian part of the brain. It's the one they say is missing in serial killers.
Yeah, right. Well, his amygdala didn't light up in the experiment. And he made the comment that, do I have one? And, the people conducting the experiment says, yeah, you have one. It just doesn't light up. So in other words, he had no fears. And I said, I'm thinking, because, when I was coaching, you put people in situations, or you wind up in situations that some of them never really anticipated or imagined. Mm-hmm. And like being in Bergen County, New Jersey, they have a county tournament, which is, I guess, going on 60 years now. And it's a big deal. And we were a small school, small group 2 school. And there were Catholic schools that are large powerhouses, and they could draw kids from far and, near and far. Mm-hmm. And, it was pretty tough to compete against them. Matter of fact, one of the schools was coached by Mike Stanton, who pitched for the Yankees. Mm-hmm. When we played them in the county tournament. And that's the kind of competition we were up against. And probably in their wildest imaginations, they didn't anticipate getting in the county finals twice in a 5-year period, which was unheard of for a school our size at the time. Mm-hmm. And, you're dealing with fear and you're dealing with emotion. And, how do you deal with that as a coach? I showed them one year, I showed them the cartoon version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And one of the players asked my assistant coach, why do you show us that? And my response to my assistant coach was, because he's one of the people who are guilty, of mm-hmm. Being afraid of headless horsemen that don't exist. Mm-hmm. And, one year I had this parent, there was a good pitcher on a team we played in a state tournament. See, the interesting thing about New Jersey, or at least Bergen County, New Jersey, is that the county tournament, the state tournament was going on at the same time, or it used to be. Then they kind of staggered it a little bit. So to compete in both tournaments at the same time was like for a school our size, a group 2 school, there's 4 groups, group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, against, the type of competition we faced was difficult. You just didn't have enough arms to go, to make it. And we did. And, but, you're dealing with, so this father, we're getting ready to play this team in the state tournament. And he starts telling the kids that this opposing pitcher on the other team, who we never wound up facing in the state tournament anyway, we faced the other kid who was probably their best pitcher, didn't throw anywhere like in the 90s. But the father's going around telling our kids that the pitcher we might face throws like 95 miles an hour.
Nah.
And I remember I was in a delicatessen in town getting lunch, and I heard that this guy said this, like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I said, that's all I need. These kids walking around saying, we're going to fix a guy throwing 95 miles an hour. So I'm trying to counter that. And this is when newspapers, you got your information from printed newspapers, not online. And I went looking for the statistics, because they used to put the statistics, the high school statistics in every like Monday. And I went back to an old issue, got it. And the kid was like ranked 15th in strikeouts. So I said to my team, this kid doesn't throw 95. I said, if he throws 95, guess what? He'd be striking out, 18 kids a game, maybe 21 kids a game. Nobody would touch him.
Right.
Throwing a legitimate 95 back, a few years back, before nobody threw 95. Now everybody does. And so I found it, and put it on the bulletin board and say, here, this guy doesn't throw 95. If he threw 95, he wouldn't be 15th in strikeouts.
Right.
So you're dealing with that, as a coach, and, you're trying to like dip into all the resources you possibly can. And, I was always interested in this sort of thing.
Yeah. So let's segue that into the unconscious and conscious brain, the differences in those. And I know I love the stories that you tell, because there's a lot of your principles in those stories, and some of the stories you've told, there's elements of that unconscious brain. So what I want you to do is just kind of briefly explain the difference between the conscious brain, the unconscious brain, and then what I like you to do is tie in the cup experiment with the kid.
Oh, okay. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm certified to teach psychology in the state of New Jersey, which you need a separate certification. So everything I learned, the hard way. Teach us. There's an old saying: if you want to learn something, teach it.
Obsession. You're right.
And I had great textbooks. And I taught advanced placement psychology too. And that I still use that textbook. That was like incredible. And there's all this stuff in there. And so obviously I gravitated towards it. But the thing, before I forget, I use stories I tell stories to teach things.
Exactly, which is great.
I relate it to whatever, like the story of Mike Schmidt. It's kind of like unforgettable. The story of George Brett. It's kind of you don't forget that. And so that's what I do. And basically I'm telling stories in these articles that I wrote. The last one, I did a thing on distractions and related it to Javier Baez and Francisco Lindor with the Mets with the thumbs down controversy thing. So that's what I was doing. But anyway, basically, the more recently developed parts of the brain, your thinking parts, the parts that land rockets on the moon and invent sticky notes and whiteout and things like that. Now that part of the brain, the ones that do your algebra homework for you and that sort of stuff, that gets in the way of your athletic performance. And the lower parts of the brain, around the brainstem, the limbic system, like um, your hippocampus, your especially your cerebellum, and the amygdala gets involved. And there's a part called the basal ganglia, which, from that's when I first ran into reading that article from New York Times Magazine. The journalist was Lawrence Shainberg. That's where I first ran into basal ganglia. I go, what the heck's basal ganglia? So I was teaching my psychology class about the basal ganglia, and I had all kinds of diagrams on the parts. I forgot all the different parts, but it's how what you take in from your senses gets, transferred to wherever regions of the brain that do it. But the thing is that, when you're really performing well, in the zone type of thing, you don't even realize you're doing what you're doing. Who was it? David Epstein. He wrote a book called The Performance Cortex. I think he did a review on Amazon for another book. I forget which one it was.
He did the sports gene too, I think.
Yeah, he might have been done. Yeah, he might have been the guy who did Sports Gene. Performance Cortex might have been the book that I'd have to check.
Reviewing.
I wind up doing things that you get me into questions, and then I start relating the things and I forget stuff that, Well, anyway, he wrote this really interesting thing on Amazon in a review. And he says, the fascinating thing about, I'm paraphrasing, the fascinating thing about athletes is that when they're doing what they are really good at, what they do, they don't even realize they're doing it. And I said, gee, that's really great. And I put the quote on that article on the unconscious brain and versus the conscious brain thing. And I said that's really, that's really, really, really good. And then, that's the article where, I talked about Mike Schmidt and his problems with self-awareness. And then there's a quote at the end of the movie Bull Durham by Annie Savoy, played by Susan Sarandon. She says, the world is made for people who aren't cursed with self-awareness, or I think something like that. And obviously she was referring to Luke Lelouch, who was like totally like out there. And that's, I put that into I didn't put that into the article originally, and I ran across that quote. So I added it to the whole mental rules of hitting thing that I've been working on. And that's it. It's like Mike Schmidt back in 1983, I guess he thought too much, and Pete Rose said the problem with Mike is that he cares too much. And then Schmidt's manager, Paul Owens, I guess he was old school, not enlightened in new age psychology. He said that Schmidt was just insecure. How do you say that? The guy's a Hall of Famer. And, he struggled with thinking too much. So I admit I'm too self-aware. And, how do you shut that off? When I was young, it drove me crazy that when I wasn't trying, I did something good. When I was trying, I didn't do anything good. And, there were no, I didn't have a psychology teacher in high school say, here, read this book. I know what you're dealing with, or even a college professor. The professor that I wrote that paper about handball and psychocybernetics, I mean, she didn't say, you're onto something. This is, no one knew, even, today, everybody, you'll see that people have like, all right, they give you a step-by-step thing, but it's not really a step-by-step thing. It's like driving down a car, like driving in a car down the street and a deer runs out in front of you, which happens up here quite a bit. Deer runs out in front of you. What do? I got to pick my foot up. I got to put it on the brake. I got to step so hard. I got to maybe turn my, you don't do that at all. It's just, you react.
Well, it's interesting too. You say that about being self-aware, and I was one of those players that was too self-aware as well. And I found that whenever I got super frustrated, being too self-aware and knowing my surroundings a little bit too much, and my performance wasn't doing very well, when I finally got to the point of frustration and or disappointment where I just finally said, you know what, I don't care.
Yeah.
You say, I don't care. And I'm going to walk away from this thing. I don't care how horrible or good or whatever. And it seemed like every time, and like you said, it's not a conscious thing per se. It's an unconscious emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And once you can get that unconscious emotional reaction of, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to take 2 days. I'm not going to think about it. And hey, it is what it is. And it was like within those 1 or 2 days, something clicks. And
right.
Then you make your adjustment.
The moment you said, I don't care anymore, you just turned your brain on.
Yeah. Right.
It happened to me. I had a pinch hit home run in college. Coach, he benched a bunch of, we had a lousy senior year. I was sitting on the bench. He brings me up, then on first and second late in the game, and I'm sitting there stewing on the bench all game. And then I walk up there. I said, now he wants me to like save the day here. I've been sitting around, and I went up there trying to hit a 3-run home run. Of course, the first couple pitches I didn't. And then I fouled one off down the left field line and squared it up. Hit a long, I just got out in front of it. Long fly ball down the left field line. And the coach from the other team said to the pitcher, keep it in the park. That's what he said to him.
Uh-huh.
And I stepped out of the box and I remember saying to myself, screw it. Whatever happens, happens. I walk in there and hit a 3-run home run.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And the coach saying to his pitcher, keep it in the park, must have, whatever. He got my mind off of myself. And I said, geez, why did he say that? And I told the story the last time about, my assistant coach in the county tournament. And I sent my assistant coach out. He was my first year assistant coach to talk to my team because they were starting to like lose it late in the game. And I sent him out there and they're going, what's he doing out here? And they were thinking so much about him going out there to talk to him and not me. Because I said, if I go out there, who knows what's going to happen. And they walk out there and they're like talking to themselves. What's he doing out here? Why did I send him out? It was just like so unusual. And it got their minds off of what they were doing. Finished the game out, won the game.
Yeah.
It's
like a pattern interrupt.
Yes, we talked about that. It's in the article. I mentioned a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco.
Was that the cup flip guy or the cup stack guy?
No, not yet. That's Eagleman.
Got it.
I'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Benjamin Libet, he passed away in 2007. He did studies on this, that the conscious brain isn't aware that you do something. Let's say you press a button or you do something voluntarily. And then he did this study where he timed it. He rigged up some kind of, I don't know, it's over my head. He rigged up some kind of device to measure. And the conclusion is that the conscious brain realizes that something is done after you already did it. And that the phrase, I think, is probably one from my AP psychology textbook, that the conscious brain is late to the event.
To the party. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. I had, I should mention his name, former player of mine. He actually holds the school record for hits. He played, actually 3.5 years. He got injured his freshman year, but had more hits. But he has the school record for hits. His name is Jay Samolowitz. He got a degree in computer engineering and then started his own business with playgrounds and games and that sort of stuff. People put in their backyard. He has his own business.
Parkour. Yeah.
Yeah. He just gave up on the computer engineering thing. And he read one of my articles and he made a comment on the article on that website, Mind Design. And he says, when I hit well, hit the ball well, I didn't even realize that I swung the bat.
Mm-hmm.
It's on there. I think that's basically, I know the last part is basically what he said. He said, I don't even realize that I swung the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I can't even say that better myself.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's, that's the thing you have to, I mean, think about, I just saw JJ Bleday, the Marlins. He was talking about his Arizona Fall League performance. And he talked about when Derek Jeter came to scout him when he was in college. Mm. And everybody's saying, do you know Derek Jeter's here? And he says, yeah. And so, you know, he obviously did well. He got drafted by the Marlins, probably be on the team this year, maybe. And there's the whole thing. If you're standing there thinking about, gee, Derek Jeter's here, I better do well. Or, pull Mike Schmidt, and start thinking about everything, or George Brett, I'm trying to hit 400, I didn't hit 400 because I tried to hit 400. And that's another thing in there where George Brett talks about, it's in that second article where he talks about when he was trying to hit 400 in 1980 in September. And he said, every at bat, I come to the plate and there's my batting average up on the scoreboard. Like as high as a 6-story building or something like that. He says, it's like there right in my face. Not, I cannot become, I cannot just turn my brain off and not be aware of my batting average. Every time I come up, it's 1 minute, it's 400, and then next minute it's 399. And next time it's like till the end of the day, it's 397. And that got to him. He didn't know how to deal with that. And, there's an interesting story about Steve Carlton. I don't even know if I could find that anywhere. It's hard to find these little articles. I remember these as a kid.
Yeah.
He used to tune out the public address announcer and not look at the scoreboard so that he wouldn't know who was batting, who he was facing, Henry Aaron's coming up or, Pete Rose or whoever. And, he used to tune it out. And he was kind of aloof and, mysterious, probably Steve Carlton, probably people didn't understand, but he was on to something. Shut everything off.
They're just a body. It's just a body. It's a body up there hitting and you're throwing against it.
He said, I was just throwing to Tim McCarver's glove. I didn't even know who was batting. And it's the awareness thing. Well, anyway, to the cup stacking thing. And I put the links in the articles.
I'll put the links in the show notes. So for those that are listening can check that out.
Yeah, the links are in the articles that I wrote. And you're going to put the links for people to check it out. David Eagleman he's still, I guess, a Stanford neuroscientist. And he did a series on PBS called The Brain with David Eagleman. And he goes into, he really goes into all this unconscious stuff. And he goes into like everything that you're attracted to, women who look a certain way, and you don't even realize it. And he went through all this stuff. Of course, the only thing I focused on in the beginning was, he mentioned baseball, hitting a baseball. I said, there it is. And it was on one of the episodes. I forget which one, maybe episode 3 or 4 he did like, I don't know, 10 of them. And he, basically, saying the same thing, like he tried to hit a baseball and all this stuff. So he had to test it. So he gets at the time a 10-year-old cup stacking champion by the name of Austin Neighbor. He was 10 years old. And he and Eagleman and this kid Austin Neighbor got rigged up to a EEG, electroencephalogram, to measure their brain waves while they're stacking cups. Of course, if you ever try to stack cups?
Yeah.
You ever try to do that?
Yep.
Like it's like, it's like mechanical, you're like a robot. And well, anyway, so this kid was a champion cup stacker. I don't know what he does now.
Mhm.
I don't know how many years ago. He's probably like, he might be out of high school by now. When he first started doing it, Eagleman asked him, how long did it take when you first started doing it? He said, 2.5 minutes. It was 10 cups.
Mhm.
And how long does it take you now? He says, 5 seconds. And he said, and the kid couldn't even do it blindfolded.
Mm.
And which I used to have my players do with their hitting. I used to have them go through drills, blindfolded or close your eyes and do it. You want to feel where your foot is. You want to feel where your shoulder is. Like you don't want to see it.
Yep.
Because it's a different type of process going on in your brain. It's got to go through your eyes, and it's got to wind up in the occipital lobe in the back, and then God knows where it goes from there. I said, just close your eyes and feel it, like you're not even watching it. And so anyway, so they rigged them up to the EEGs, and they showed them on the program, and they're on the links in the article. They're on YouTube. And David Eagleman's, when he was doing it, his EEG just lit up like, a Christmas tree.
Meaning his conscious brain was really active.
Yes, his conscious brain, he was going through it step by step, methodically. He was thinking through it. It's like when you're a kid and you learn how to ride a bike for the first time. And I still remember the first time I did it because I crashed. And, you're thinking about what you're doing. And the young man at the time, neighbor, his brain didn't light up hardly at all. There was nothing going on, in the upper regions of his brain. I mean, he wasn't thinking at all. He wasn't trying. And he wasn't even using a lot of energy, because the brain uses energy. And Eagleman said, like neighbor's brain was just hardly doing anything. And mine was like working overtime. Actually, in that article, Finding the Zone, Shaneberg talked about that. He called it the paradox, that the upper parts of our brains invent the games that we play.
And then the lower parts are the ones that play it.
Yes, exactly. He said that's the paradox. Like Naismith invented basketball, and whoever invented football, and it's the your upper part of your brain. It's like inventing like checkers or chess or Clue or Monopoly. There's you're thinking through this,
right?
But like in sports, that part of the brain is circumvented when you play it well. You're not thinking about it. And when I hear like coaches yelling to kids, get your elbow up, do this, do that, and you hear coaches yelling to kids all these instructions. Why? You're only making them think about something that you're taking them away from what is natural.
Right.
I mean Yogi Berra, I think Yogi Berra would probably make most neuroscientists jealous. He said you can't think and hit at the same time.
Yeah.
True. And, when he was in a slump, they said, Yogi, what are you gonna do about your slump, or whatever? How are you gonna combat your slump? He said, I'm not in a slump. I'm just not hitting. And he knew something. Whatever people's impressions, he said a lot of crazy things that are very, very funny. He's even quoted in my AP psychology book. I should tell you something, right? And Yogi, he understood something on a basic human level. He was no neuroscientist, Didn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Probably if he was, he probably wouldn't be able to hit.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing. And it's, the results, thinking about the results or worrying about the results or worrying about who's watching. I think you said this on one of your posts about parents. The worst thing about playing sports for kids is the ride home.
Yeah.
I think you said that. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't my original idea, but it was from either one of my parents or it was from something I read. Yeah.
I think I heard it from you first. I mean, that's where I heard it. Yeah, that's usually the case. And there's another thing in that article. I mean, I throw in stuff from like old different places. The movie Last Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you mentioned you liked that movie. Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned it to you.
Yep.
And the main character is captured by the samurai, and he eventually learns the ways of the samurai. And one of the things he has to learn is sword fighting, but they train with wooden or bamboo swords. I think it's called kendo training.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's really getting his rear end kicked in by the samurai guys who enjoy, picking on this American. And but he keeps fighting. And the leader of the samurai son, his job was to like teach him the way of the samurai, basically, and try to teach him, kendo training without him getting his rear end kicked in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to him, too many mind. Too many mind. It means your mind is too active. You're thinking too much.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he says, no mind. No mind. You can't, you got to shut everything off. Mm-hmm. And he says, you got to, you too many mind, you minding the sword, you're minding the people watching you, and you're minding the enemy. Well, it's the same thing when you're hitting.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about, your bat, you're thinking about the people watching you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're trying to deal with the pitcher. And, how do you do that? You can't.
Yeah.
And I found that, I battled that as a kid, and drove me nuts. The more I tried, the worse I did. The less I tried, the better I did.
Mm-hmm.
I did things and it's then I in the process of writing this article for that website, Craig Kimbrough shows up and Corbin Burns shows up in the summer. And I already sent the article in, it was already on there. So I quickly did an update and send it in. And, can you add this to the article? It fits perfectly. Well, Kimbrough was the closer in a no-hitter, combined no-hitter the Cubs threw against the Dodgers. Zach Davies, I think, was a starter. And Ryan Tapero came in, and then Andrew Chafin and Kimbrough came in last. The last three guys were with the Cubs by the time I was writing the article. And Kimbrough gets interviewed after the game. He didn't understand why everybody's running out, like celebrate. Like what's going on? Like everybody's running out and like they won the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who interviewed him, he asked him, he says, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that I was in a no-hitter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go.
Right.
Mike Schmidt, there you go, Mike Schmidt. You can't be too self-aware. Well, Craig Kimbrough had no idea he was involved in a no-hitter. I don't know what he was doing out in the bullpen. I don't know if he could score. Because the bullpen at Wrigley Field is under the stands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if you saw, I don't even know. And then Corbin Burns, for the Brewers, he struck out 10 guys in a row, tying a major league record. And he had no idea that he was doing. He even said, "I had no idea." He must have heard Kimbrough. He said, "I had no idea." And what happened after he struck out the 10th guy, the 10th guy, the catcher threw the ball into the dugout. And he goes, like, "What are you doing? Why are you throwing the ball in the dugout?" And then he realized that he tied this record. First pitch to the next batter, I forget what it was. Line drive single, right field.
Right. Yeah.
He broke the spell.
Broke the spell.
And he had no idea. And he said after the game, he said, "I had no idea." It's like, what did I do? And as soon as somebody called his attention to it, he gives up a line drive single.
Breaks the spell.
Yeah, I think he wound up striking out 15. I think he pitched like, I don't know, maybe 8 innings that day, something like that. He struck out 15. But there's the point. I mean, it had an interrupt. He lost. He fell out of the zone. Somebody drew his attention to it.
Right.
And it's
that's a great story, Joe, to end this one on like unconscious and the conscious brain, the differences between the two. Before I let you go, anywhere people can find you, reach out, email you.
I created a new email called it's the hitting mindset, one word across, at gmail.com. Okay. The hitting mindset. Surprised nobody has used that yet. And, in fact, I might even, who knows what I'm going to do with that. I mean, this is like a work in progress.
Yep.
It's, we'll see.
minddesign.org, and that's mind
mind-designsports.org.
And I'll link those in the show notes for people that can go to the exact articles.
I think mine are the only baseball articles on there. And there's one about distractions, like getting people out of their conscious mind. I reference Lindor and Baez and the whole thing they had with the Yankees. They were, stealing pitches that Taiwan Walker was tipping, supposedly. I don't know how they knew that in the second inning. And I didn't know why they had their loudest whistler, a reliever, Wandy Peralta, in the bullpen in the second inning. So obviously somebody knew something from somewhere, either scouting or somebody tipped somebody off. And I related that story. But all the controversy with Baez and Lindor, they created so much controversy and so much ill will, and that they forgot. Lindor forgot that he was, doing terribly. Yeah, he had 3 home runs against the Yankees that weekend. I mean, completely, the old Francisco Lindor just showed up. I mean, he was probably thinking so much about everybody hating him and thumbs down this and thumbs down that and the whole business, that he just forgot about how bad he was hitting all year. And I don't know, it worked. And in that article too, I related to obviously the movie The Legend of Bagger Vance and golf and The Natural. Remember when Glenn Close got up? He was in a horrendous slump in Chicago, and she gets up and everybody's telling her to sit down, and the sun was shining from behind her. She was like an angel, dressed all in white. Then he hits one, breaks the clock on the scoreboard, and
well, that'd be a good part 3, the distractions, like how to do those panic interrupts. But
that's one of the 3 articles. And
very cool.
That's that.
Very cool. Well, hey, Joe, thanks for your time again today, man. Yeah, we'll have to do a part 3. Eventually we'll get to 10 probably, I'm sure. But thank you for your time.
You too. Are you going to stick around a little bit after you close this down?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks.
So thanks again for your time, brother.
All right. You too.